This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Happy Tuesday, Pacer Nation, and welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden and Facci. Today, we're getting into part 2 of the mailbag, going all in versus staying patient. Are you looking forward to this one?
I am. It's always fun hearing from you guys. So I always love the different directions that some of these questions take us. But what I always love the most is seeing some of the same names, especially for years and years that we've been doing this. It's always a blast.
I know your favorite one's coming up here at number 1. So tell us who it is. Was kicking us off at the mailbag today.
My man, DJ Davis Law, a long time listener, supporter, question sender, inner, however you want to word that. I appreciate you, DJ. He said,
it's not DJ Davis. It's DJ Davis.
Always DJ Davis Law. Always. That's right. Always. If the law is ever missing, I'm going to say the full thing. So appreciate you, DJ. Said, is it time for the Pacers to go all in on the championship move? If so, who should they target to get over the top?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think that they have to make another move because I don't think this roster is capable of beating the Knicks or the Celtics if they get Giannis in a 7-game series as currently constructed. They need another piece off the bench to kind of just be another scorer. And people might disagree with me, but I just I don't care if they disagree or not. It's just how I feel, and I can't get away from it. You feel the same way. We've talked about Ayo Dosunmu. I think there's players out there that make sense. Like, we've talked about Chris Middleton. I've soured on him as the offseason has prolonged just because I don't know how healthy he'll be and what he can provide. Saddiq Bey's the dream because of the salary, but it's also just like, what are the Pelicans going to want back for him? I think Najee Marshall's also a name that I really like, but just finding somebody else that can put the ball in the hoop off the bench is going to be pivotal for this team. I don't know how they go about doing that, but they have to find a way. And so I'm sorry that I'm not giving you like a specific name. Like, I personally would love the Trey Murphy III trade. Like, I'm very enticed by what he could provide because it would, just make a lot of things easier, even if you are giving up somebody that's part of this core 7, like an Aaron Nesmith or an Obi Toppin. And the reason why it's because he can put the ball in the basket in a different way. But yeah, I mean, they got to address it though, Facci. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, look, I think that they got to do something because the rest of the league is like, not to say catching up because it's not like we won it all, but like the league's getting better. I think for the Pacers' previous paths, like sometimes there was some injuries, sometimes it was like the stars aligned perfectly. Like we knocked off the Cavs and the Bucks were weaker, and then we took down the Knicks, and now like you mentioned Knicks look good. Like other teams are going to be retooling. I think that like last year was kind of like a little bit of a weird year in the NBA, or at least the Eastern Conference, where I think a lot of teams are going to be getting significantly better, and some of the bad teams will just stay bad. But for the Pacers, Trey Murphy, makes a lot of sense. That's the hot name right now that everyone's talking about. Also think that like when you're talking about all-in championship move, like it's not going to happen, but like the Pacers were able to convince CJ McCollum to take the mid-level. That is an awesome free agency move. Previous episode, you mentioned Ayo Dosunmu. Like, that would be a really good move as well. But I'm not, like, firing up the trade machine at all times, being like, how do I act like a mad scientist right now and, like, gut this roster down the middle? Like, I think a big part of trading for Zubats and, like, waiting and not doing any other moves last year was that you wanted to see this group together. And I think that the Pacers aren't looking to like, chop this team down. I think they're really looking to like round out the edges. And if there's an opportunity to do something smart where you're not sacrificing that core 7, I think the Pacers, like that's really what they have their eyes on.
Yeah. And another name I'm going to throw out there that I think is probably, we've talked about it before. I think it's under the radar. It's Derrick Jones Jr. with the Clippers. Like, just a solid 3-and-D off the bench, Foch. He's been starting, for the Clippers last couple of years. But like I talked about it, made the finals with the Heat, made the finals with the Mavericks. Players like that can help impact the game. Like we saw what Landry Shamet did in the finals, right? Like he had a very good game 1 and game 2. We had a very good playoff series. Like, of course, like here's what I'll say. Like everybody's like, oh, Landry Shamet kind of fell off in games 3 and games 4. It's like, that doesn't matter. Bench players like that, if they can win you 1 game in a playoff series, that's massive.
Yes,
and
that goes a long way.
That's why they're bench players. Like if they can help get you a win, great. But your starters are what you need to get you the other wins. So I just think that Derrick Jones Jr. kind of has that potential to come in there and make some big defensive plays at the end of a game to, hit a big shot, to go out there aggressively, get rebounds. Like, it's not like you need a whole lot to make this team a lot better. I just think you need a little bit more depth. And so, kind of going back to John's question from last, mailbag about, breaking up the depth or whatever. I just think they need to strengthen the depth. I think the depth is not very strong right now, but they can make some moves to strengthen the depth, and they have enough space to do it. Now, I don't know what it would take to get him. Again, I'm not trying to talk about trades and trade ideas, but just a name that I would target, like somebody like that can really make a difference.
I think so. I mean, it's just that's where we're at, is like, help out the bench. Help out the bench. I really do think that you get a backup center, you get a scorer off the bench. Point guard, I'm not terribly worried about. I think it's a good group.
Yeah,
It's a good group, and I don't think that, like, we're in this, like, we got to make a blockbuster move or we can't compete in the East. Like, no. I mean, look, Knicks fans will celebrate this for the next 50 years, but and there's a little part of me in the back of my head that says, "Well, the only team you haven't been able to beat." So, let's just get healthy. I've thought about it. I mean, trust me, I got people coming out of left field living in the state of New York. Everyone's coming at me. And I'm like, all right, hey, good, great. I just can't wait to play basketball again. Cannot wait. So we'll see him out there. But what do you got for question number 2?
Yeah, Jason Lowe wants to know, can the Pacers make a realistic all-in move this offseason without sacrificing a second title window with Tyrese Haliburton?
I don't think so. I really do think if you make an all-in move, at some point you got to pay the price. And I think that, like, we know for this team, a lot of these contracts are structured in 2-year deals. Either you're going to double down and you're going to do things like extend Pascal Siakam for maybe too much money, and maybe when he's a little bit older. Like, I know that's going to be a really tough decision to make, but we already owe our 2029 first round pick to the Clippers. If you're talking about, like, the all-in type of Trey Murphy-ish type of move where you're talking about, like, 3 first-round picks most likely, I don't know, a swap or so, who knows? Eventually, if the Pacers have one bad season, that's when you start to go, all right, do we have to trade off players just to try and recoup picks? So I do think if you make that all-in move, like, you're trying to get one championship, not potentially multiple. And I think that for Haliburton, he's got a long career ahead of him. Hope every single year of it is in Indiana. But if you make an all-in move, it comes with a cost that you pay down the line.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, here's the thing. It depends on who you trade for, right? Because, like, for example, like we've talked about, I'm just going to keep bringing him up because he's the hot topic. Trey Murphy III. He's
young enough. He could be here.
He's turning 26 in like 3 days, right? So he'll be 26, around the same age as Tyrese Haliburton, as Andrew Nembhard. Like, he's a part of this core, and I think if you make a move to get him, now you do trade some of your picks in the future, you're going to get those picks back over time, right? Because you're not going to trade every single pick that you have. Like, there's no way the Pacers would do that. But if you get a 26-year-old wing that can be that second, third option by, next to Haliburton, like, at some point they're going to have to find someone that can replace the Siakam role. And right now there is currently nobody on this roster that can be a number 2 on a championship level team. Do I think Trey Murphy III can be a number 2 on a championship level team? Probably not. But
I don't think so.
but like, if you have him and Nembhard and Zubats back together, like, that's really good, third options across the board at, third, fourth, and fifth options. And so now you're looking at, okay, how do we replace Siakam? And so that's a big amount of money coming off the books that you could go out there and try to target if you have that draft pick potentially, or if it's a swap and you were able to go out there and get somebody, who knows? But, like, just don't discount this team if they make an all-in move to, like, how are they going to figure out the future? Because they are very smart about getting off players when it's the right time. And
I agree with that.
So while it might hurt at times, be like, oh man, they didn't do this, I didn't do that. They are very, very smart with how they build a basketball team. And as long as they got Tyrese Haliburton healthy on this roster, and they have 4 really good guys around him, 3 really good guys around him, and they can kind of fill in that last player to be the 5th starter, like, I think that's fine. Like, I mean, as much as we like Aaron Nesmith, right? Like, does Aaron Nesmith really fit the bill of, like, a starter on any team in the NBA? Probably not.
Not many, especially ones that are competing for a championship. No. Like, no. There's not many, like, teams in the NBA Finals that are like on the cusp of winning a championship, where Aaron Nesmith is your starter. That shouldn't be a knock on him. I know it definitely probably sounds like there's no way it couldn't be a knock on him, but he's a really good player. But I do think that the Pacers have always kind of window shopped for something just a little bit dreaming bigger, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that might hurt them the most with this, it's not they already kind of made the all-in move. It's losing this lottery pick that might actually hurt them in the long run for that second window.
I agree. I think that would have been that scenario that, like, if you did, I don't know, if everything worked out perfectly, and we can go down this rabbit hole of forever, but like AJ DeBanson, now you have now and later, you have everything. And you're like, you're playing with house money, and anything that happens, you could trade picks and say like, we have the pick of all picks. But yeah, now we're definitely backpedaling a little bit. And if you trade too many picks, then you're just flat out of picks. And I think at that point, you're really banking on your team winning a championship. If anything less than that becomes failure. That's a tough spot. So next question on here is from Howling Fish Tank Fan. So he said, should the Pacers make a big move now or wait until the trade deadline?
I think it's easier to make a big move in the offseason, but I do understand why you should wait probably till the deadline to kind of see what this group has. I mean, that's the way I've been feeling anyway. I feel like they could make a small move right now, but if things are really at like a crossroads of the trade deadline, right? And you're sitting here like, okay, do we like this team or not? What do we need to address? Man, this has really been a bad stretch for TJ McConnell this year. He's really aged. Or Jarris Walker's not living up to the expectations. Or man, Ben Shepherd, like this has not been a good contract year for him. At least you get a chance to see what you got before you make a move and before you see this team all healthy again once again back together. So I think the deadline probably is a smarter move, but I think it's a lot harder to make in-season trades than it is off-season trades.
I think the trade deadline is a smarter move. I think just Indiana has somehow just mastered that a little bit with like the Tyrese Haliburtons and the Pascal Siakams and the Zubats, where they've like patiently waited and taken their time and made the right calls, and kept those lines of communication open, and it's worked out. I do think that, there's always like going to be more names and players available right when free agency happens. And I think that's where more teams are looking to maybe get off some money or this or that, or, make some deals. So I could see that maybe it's like more opportunity now, but at the trade deadline, I feel like is always where Indiana's done some of its best work. So I kind of lean towards waiting until the trade deadline.
All right, let's move on to question number 4 here from Mikey O. He wants to know if you had to move on, or if you had to move one of the core 7 with TJ McConnell, who would it be? So if you're trading 2 of the core 7, Facci, who would it be?
When I first read this, I read that as like, it would be McConnell. So I guess that part's a little bit tricky. So I guess at that point, you're really deciding between Obi and Aaron Nesmith, right?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and rank the core 7. I think that'd be the easiest thing to do. So number 1 is Tyrese Haliburton.
Yes. Yeah.
Number 2 is Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's it. Siakam, and then 3 Andrew Nembhard. Right,
4 Zubats.
Yeah. And then I guess now you're all of a sudden you're talking about 5. It would have to be, I guess, Nesmith, right? Nesmith, or I don't know, Nesmith or Toppin. I don't know. That's where you debate.
The lack of depth behind Toppin, which we've talked about, makes me nervous. I they're so different, and they bring so many different things. I think Nesmith brings more. I think it is the right answer is Nesmith because he does bring more to the table.
I think so,
but it depends on what you're getting back in the trade.
I know, and I agree with that because I do think that like if you're making a big trade like this, you're probably trading for Aaron Nesmith's like position or like replacement. Like that's kind of how I view it, as like whatever big trade you're going to make is probably your starting 3. And then therefore you're either talking about Nesmith is coming off the bench, which is a great, luxury to have, or he's not on the team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, definitely McConnell's in there. And then I guess I would rank Nesmith higher, but I would feel like Nesmith would be more likely to be in the deal. That's kind of how I would put it.
I think it's just because of the position thing. Like if they were able to go out there and find like a power forward, like I don't even know who to throw out there, but like, is Denny Avdia a power forward?
Yeah. I think he's technically a power forward. Yeah.
Okay, so somebody like that, like obviously he would probably still start, but I think you can make the case where it's like, we can play him off the bench at the 4, so like we don't need whatever. I'm trying to throw a name out there that makes sense. Like Christian Brown's been another name that's been thrown out as like a potential trade guy, but like, that doesn't really move the needle. it's just a lot of the players you think about that could be moved. Like, okay, here's one. Jaime Jaquez Jr., right? Like, just was like a top 3 finalist for 6th man of the year. Miami is definitely looking to include him in the trade for Giannis. Now, there's been mixed reports. The last I saw was that the Bucks would have interest in keeping him long term, but if for some reason they're like, we don't want to pay him because he's due for a new contract, could the Pacers get in and take him? And do you think Jaquez Jr., at that point, I'd rather trade Obi and keep Nesmith and bring Jaquez Jr. off the bench as the 4.
Yes.
Then kind of break that up. But then again, like it's such a tough discussion because it's really hard to replicate what Obi does and what Aaron does.
Yeah, either way, there's no way around it. There's going to be a loss if you trade any of those players, but I do think that they shouldn't be totally just out of question. Like, you can't move those guys because they're not the top 4 that we ranked. Like, those 4 players, it's like hard to imagine the Pacers really, being able to achieve what they want to do without any of those 4. When it comes to like an Obi Toppin, like, sure, the Pacers could take a hit, but you can't say like, all of a sudden the Pacers just can't compete without Obi Toppin. So that's kind of how I would put it.
Well, and just real quick, I mean, go back to what, we talked about this on the podcast probably about a month ago when Jake Query shared that whole thing about how the Clippers wanted one of Nembhard or Toppin
Yep.
in the Zoo trade with Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson to get it done, or the pick. And they elected to trade their 5th overall pick to keep those. That's how much they value both those guys. So I'm just saying, like, it's interesting that it wasn't Nembhard or Nesmith. It was Nembhard or Toppin.
I know.
That is interesting. That's interesting.
That is very interesting. So still something then where that can make you go either way of like, what should they have done that? This, that. But
if it would have been Nesmith, and just imagine like Nesmith and Kawhi together, like that'd be such a defensive minded team. That'd be kind of fun to watch. But anyway, I digress.
Hey. Oh well. Next question. Planeta NBA, perhaps?
Planet. I think it's Planet A NBA.
Who knows? That one's definitely
just
up
do Planet NBA. That makes more sense.
We'll say that. Planet NBA. What is the most realistic way for the Pacers to improve the roster this offseason?
Yeah, I think I have to kind of go back to last episode, what I said, where I think they could trade Jarris Walker into a traded player exception, create the most money possible for them, and then use the full mid-level to go get an Ayo Dosunmu, somebody like that. Because, like, to me, like, you can wait and see if Jarris develops into something really good for this playoff team, or you can see someone that's proven in the playoffs they can do it at the highest level and go out and get that type of player, and you're not really losing a whole lot. Like, I get it, Jarris is 22, so you're giving up on another draft pick that was in the lottery, but clearly he is not ever going to be a long-term starter on this team. I don't even see that happening in 2 years after this window's closed. I think that I think that Johnny Furphy has more of a chance of starting once Pascal's contract is up. Now, we still got to be on extension watch for Pascal, because they could extend him to a 1-year deal, 2-year deal. And then once again, it's like, you've already got Nesmith locked up till 29. You've got Siakam maybe locked up for a couple more years. Like, where does Jarris fit in? And that's why I think that just kind of getting off of Jarris, creating more space for yourself to get an actual like 2 or 3 that can put the ball in the basket, that's the most realistic way.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The path to improving, I think, is like having Jarris as your trade chip. I think that you also have that portion of the mid-level exception that you could leverage. There are some good players out there that we brought up in other previous lists, like, just players along the lines of like a Chris Middleton or Robert Williams or like a Luke Kennard or Gary Trent Jr., like players that aren't going to like, make a huge splash, but like could improve this roster, which was the question. So like, there are guys out there that could help, but I do think that if you want to dream bigger, then it's always probably going to come through a trade rather than free agency. You're going to be a little bit handcuffed if the best that you could do is a portion of the mid-level exception. So I do think that like, involving Jarris as some sort of trade chip could really unlock, quite a bit more for this team.
All right, let's go to question 6. Another one here from Planet NBA. They said, what is the biggest thing standing between the Pacers and true contention?
I just think that the bench unit used to be the gold standard back in the day, or not back in the day, a couple of years ago. Like when the Pacers were really just like up and coming, they had the number 1 bench unit in the NBA, like in terms of scoring. It's just the bench I just don't think it's just that good anymore. So I think that on paper, their starting 5, it's good. It is good. 4 out of 5 of them have been playing together for a while. Great. Like you you can definitely upgrade at the 3. I think that, like, when we talked about earlier how, like, New York is New York and their starting 5 is intact. Like, I think maybe, I don't know, Mitchell Robinson is someone that, whatever, he's like off the bench. But anyway, so I just think that, like, the Knicks are going to be good. Like, the Celtics are going to find a way to be really good. And then you look at, like, Cleveland should still be good. The Pistons, you could probably make an argument, come back even better, and they were already the 1 seed. I just think that they'll be more experienced. The Pacers do need to add to this team, and I think that, like, now when you look at, like, where they were 2 seasons ago when things were going great, you had your microwave scorer off the bench in Benedict Mathurin, like someone that was an integral part of, like, their bench unit. You had Miles Turner, who you knew what you were gonna get at. Actually, you hoped you knew what you were gonna get out of Turner on
You
a
never
night in,
do.
night out basis, but you never knew. You never knew. You couldn't really set your watch by it. It wasn't that consistent. But anyway, I just feel like this team now, like, you're lacking, like, who is that go-to scorer off the bench? Obi Toppin does a lot of things good, but you're not always penciling him in for 20 points or 15 to 20 points. You're just not. So, like, they need to bring in another scorer off the bench, shore up their depth. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, I think honestly the first thing I would say is health. I think health is obviously the biggest thing standing between them and contention. Because look how many injuries they've had over the years. Like, I know Neesmith has missed time the last, like, 3 years, I feel like. I know Nembhard constantly misses time throughout the season. Obi missed a ton of games last year because of the stress fracture in his foot. Haliburton always is missing games. The only one that ever really kind of seems to never miss time is Siakam. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, like, Siakam rarely misses time. TJ is kind of hit or miss. He had the hamstring last year, but he's going to probably be missing more time the older he gets. Obi had been mostly healthy before the stress fracture, so I'm not too worried about his health, but that was a weird anomaly last year. But yeah, they get dinged up a little bit too much for my liking. And then you mentioned that just kind of goes into the depth, because what happens if Neesmith gets hurt throughout the regular season and he's gone for like 3 weeks? That could be a tough stretch of games that determines whether you're the 3rd seed or the 6th seed, right? And that's like home court advantage in the first round or not. And do you trust Jarrison Shep to fill in for that spot over that 3-week stretch and be good enough? That's where it all comes down to, like, how do you address the roster and what needs to be fixed? So I just think it's interesting. And what I will say too quickly here, like, when it gets to playoff time, you know that you're going to shrink your rotation down to like 8 or 9 players most of the time. Pacers were playing Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant in the NBA Finals in Game 7. Like, they were desperate for any kind of help. And if I'm just looking at it from like from a recent Finals perspective, the San Antonio Spurs were ahead of schedule, and most importantly, their bench was such a disaster. Like, they had Dylan Harper, who was great, but, like, who is your next best bench player? Keldon Johnson, and this
Dude, Keldon Johnson averaged 4.4 points per game in the NBA Finals. That was your 6th man of the year.
Yeah,
I'm a supporter. That was tough to watch.
I think Keldon Johnson is better than what he showed in the finals, but I think this matchup in the finals is what hurt him the most, because they had so many players with size that can kind of match up with what he does. But other than that, you're looking at Luke Cornett, you're looking at a Harrison Barnes, Carter Bryant, a rookie. Like, they just lacked so much depth on this team that you saw how their shooting numbers just got worse each quarter. Now, their coach did not do a very good job making adjustments. I'll get into that later, but all I'm getting at is, like, depth matters, but at the same time, it's got to be the right type of depth. And it's just like, hey, we got Jay Huff. I got somebody on Facebook saying, I think Huff and Potter are great backups. I said, okay, explain to me why they're great backups, because before they got here, Huff was the 3rd string center on the Memphis Grizzlies, who weren't even in the playoffs really, or if they were like the play-in team. And then you got Micah Potter, who was chilling out at home till Christmas. Like, they weren't on rosters, and they weren't part of deep rosters or they weren't part of a rotation because they weren't good. And it's like, I'm just supposed to believe that all of a sudden they're just going to magically be good because Haliburton's back? Like, no. Like, they're fine 3rd string centers. They're not guys I'm going to trust in the playoff series. If you think that the moments when Cornette was on the floor instead of Wemby were scary, Cornette is better than both of those 2 players.
Yes, he is. Cornette is a solid backup center. Like, he
for the regular season. Yes,
exactly. That's what it is. Like, he's like, okay, he's capable. He's been around. He's been on some teams, all that. But, like, he's making like $10 million a year. Like, he's not like a minimum contract guy. And then So
give me Santi Aldama.
Last question. Yes, of course. Hey, he popped up in some what was it? Center of Attentions, right? And
he was in there,
we had
baby.
him.
He's been on this podcast a few different times from me.
He would.
I like
absolutely.
It. I love me.
So last question of this ep. Scotty Green's El Camino said, "Will the Pacers have enough elite shooting if they don't make a trade?"
Well, here's the thing: they can make a signing, so but they do need to address it. They are missing a true shooter on this team, and we talked about a lot of names out there, but like Luke Kennard is somebody that would be great if they can get him in here for this team. I think he'd be an awesome shooter for this team and like a massive upgrade over Shep.
Absolutely. Look, I think, long story short, I just don't think this team has enough shooting. I know that, like, in the past, sure, when everything went perfectly, like, there was a bunch of really good shooters. A lot of them regressed last year, and that's probably the Haliburton effect. But it can't just be you bring in Haliburton, everybody's now back to being 40% three-point shooters. The only two players that actually were better shooters last year than in previous years were Ben Shepherd and Andrew Nembhard. Guys like Obi Toppin, Jarris, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam all took steps backwards last year, three-point shooting wise. And I had mentioned it previously in other episodes. Like, Indiana's lacking that like sniper three-point shooter they've had in the past when you had like Buddy Hield and Doug McDermott and other stuff like that. And when I say Doug McDermott, I don't mean second stint as a Pacer Doug McDermott where the guy just couldn't buy a bucket. I mean the first time around. So I think that they need to do something. Getting a guy like Luke Kennard all of a sudden now changes everything, and now it just feels like you could be dangerous from three because that's the last guy you could leave open. There'd be a true scenario where he could be shooting about 50% from three in Indiana, and that shouldn't sound that crazy because he's had seasons where he shot like 48%. So they do need to address shooting, no doubt about it.
All right, Facci. Well, that's going to wrap it up for part 2 of the mailbag. We're going to be back tomorrow with some fun stuff here, and I'm really excited about this because we're talking luxury tax, ownership, and free agency. So we've got a lot of trade stuff going on in the first one. Now we're going to get into more of the other ways the Pacers can go by doing this. So, that's been a lot of fun answering your questions. We've got 14 down. We've got 7 more to go for tomorrow. So with that being said, Facci, if you're thankful for these awesome fans that are listening to our show, hit us with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.